Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for your coming. Thank you for your continuous attendance and your participation in all of these workshops. As you can see, today's workshop is a unique workshop. In fact, the topic is going to be introduced for the first time at the English Language Writing Center. It is about effective communication at work. And this workshop is going to be presented by our distinguished academic writing specialist, Mr. Ahmed Jan. By the way, Mr. Ahmed Jan always, mashallah, introduces very challenging topics and workshops. You'll enjoy it today, inshallah. Mr. Ahmed, if you are ready, the floor is yours. You can take the lead and start.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Kamal. So kind of you. Thank you for the nice introduction. Thank you for coming to this session. I'm particularly thankful to the Writing Center, Dr. Basim, Brother Yahya Al-Ghabidi, and Mr. Kamal for giving me this opportunity to conduct this session on effective communication at work. I would just like to start with an account of how I gave my consent to present this session. By the way, am I loud enough? My voice is clear to everyone?
Yeah, clear.
Yeah, thank you. So a few weeks ago, Brother Kamal and the Writing Center actually gave us these topics, but that's a preliminary sort of intimation to everyone that they're going to conduct a session on a particular topic. But when I saw my name against this topic, I was actually tempted. And promptly I responded to him by saying, yes, I'll conduct this session. And this confidence, or let's say the prompt response was actually triggered by the fact that for the last almost 2 years, I have been dealing with something related to organizational management, leadership, organizational culture, communication, and similar topics as a part of an MBA program I'm enrolled in one of the universities in the UK as a part-time student. So when I saw communication there, I said, I must do this session. Because when we normally think about communication, what comes to mind, and especially so when it happens in a language institute, communication is the verbal communication, it's the language. It has a linguistic aspect to it. That is what normally taken. It will be a little unbecoming to talk about the management, the management science, and that sort of a thing when it comes to communication. But we are going to do it that way today. So communication, as I said, in this session will be. It's not the language component of it. To what extent we can be effective communicators is not from the language point of view. It will be more of a management science point of view that we'll be dealing with. Right. So I would just like to introduce the agenda that we'd be following. That's what we have a plan for today. So the session will start with an introduction to what communication is. And then the next thing we'll be dealing with is how communication is used as an organizational tool. And at the same time, we would be dealing with how communication is dealt as a leadership role. So when I say communication as an organizational tool or as a leadership tool, I'm mindful of the distinction the difference between leadership and management, and that we'll be making clear in the session. And we would also be discussing the hindrances to effective communication at workplace. So this is very important to focus here, that most of the discussion that we will do here in this session will talk about, we will deal with communication at workplace. So communication as we know it is also a social phenomenon. So that social aspect of it will largely be not a part of this session. So we will be focusing on communication at work. And once we are able to identify some of the hindrances, the final thing we will do is how we can effectively communicate, overcoming the hindrances and all that. So let's start. As I said, the first thing is to know what communication is. So in the management sciences, communication is actually, it has its origin in a Latin word, communis, which means common or sharing. So there is this aspect of sharing, and that is, there's the essence of communication. And as you can see on the screen, the definition that it says here, So the definition goes like this. It's a sharing of information between two or more individuals or groups to reach a common understanding. This is the sense in which communication is usually dealt with in the current sense. In this definition, the highlighted expressions are particularly important to understand. So the first thing that I've highlighted in that definition is information. Information is the main cause of communication. We communicate to share the information. So there is something, there is a reason to communicate. And that reason is there is something in the speaker's or the communicator's head. And that is what he wants to convey to the listener or the receiver of information. So that is the main reason of communication. So this is the first very important aspect to understand in understanding communication. And the second thing is, it says two or more individuals. So communication does not take place in isolation. A single person cannot communicate by himself or to himself. So there's always a duality there. So there is someone listening to you. There is someone responding to you. So that is a very important aspect of it. And this someone who is outside the sender of information can be a single person, or it can be a group of people, or it can be the employees of an organization as a whole. So that's very important to understand here. And the next thing, which actually defines the goal of communication, it says the purpose of all this is to reach a common understanding. So the main goal that we want to achieve in communicating is to reach a common understanding. And what it is not, when I say it is to reach a common understanding, is it is not to agree with the speaker. So reaching common understanding does not mean agreeing with the speaker. Agreeing or disagreeing are some other aspects of it, which we'll be dealing with in this session later today. Okay. Now, once we say there is someone sending a message and there is someone receiving a message, it looks as if it's a linear process from one person to another, from one person to a group, from one person to some individuals in whatever way. But the fact is, it is a little different. So the transmission of a message is communicated. It goes from the sender to the receiver, and it has so many other aspects to it which need to be understood. So the first thing is, as you can see on the screen, the middle to the left, the middle square there, sender. So there's the sender of the information, and there is to the right side, there is the receiver. So the sender sends a message. That means it's communicating, and that message is sent to the receiver who is receiving the message. So once this takes place, the sender sends and the receiver receives, that means communication took place. But it's not that easy. What actually happens is the sender sends a message or information. That message is actually encoded into a particular form. Now, how that message is sent? Is it going to be, are you going to write to the person? Are you going to speak? Is it going to be a memo, a letter, or a voice note, or whatever it is? That is the first thing you need to define. And the next thing to understand there is the medium, how you're going to send it. Is it going to be a face-to-face conversation? Is it going to be an email using some electronic means? And so all these things actually come there when you send a message from you to the receiver of the message. And then the understanding of that message from the receiver's part would depend upon his ability to decode the encoded message. Now, you see that the encoding and decoding, these are two opposites. So, for example, if I have a message in my mind and I want to convey it to someone out there who speaks Arabic and he does not speak, let's say, my language. Let's say I speak German. So the encoding that I have done, I have put it into a German language, and that will not be, the receiver will not be able to decode it. Hence, communication will not take place. And if the medium is a hindrance there again, communication will again not take place. So communication actually from the sender to the receiver has so many hindrances between the two. Once it reaches, let's say all happens, encoding is there, there's the medium which is understandable to the receiver and he's able to decode it. But there will be a lot of information loss, once, from the message that the sender of the message has in his head, in the idea, in the form of an idea, reaching the receiver's mind, the message will never be the same as it is present in the sender's mind. And it is not only the inability of the receiver to accept or to understand the message, rather there are so many other factors. For example, if the sender is able to encode using proper language when he's sending a message to the receiver, does the receiver have the full ability to decode that message? Do they both have the same linguistic ability to encode and decode the message? So all these things will impact understanding of the message or transmission of the message. So once it reaches the receiver, let's assume that everything is perfect. So it reaches there with some information lapse, it reaches the receiver. It does not stop there. It's not that linear. It's not one way. So what actually happens is there will be a lot of bargaining, taking place there. Now the receiver actually becomes the sender at that time. So he is sending back some messages, some confirmations, and he wants to make sure what he understands is the right message. So this is the next phase of communication, and that's called the feedback phase. So again, it goes through the same channel, back to the sender, and again, the cycle continues. So this is normally, it's actually presented here in a very colorful way. But the thing is, we all do this in our regular and everyday communication, and that's how things happen. And in the center of it, you see there is something, the noise thing. The noise is not necessarily the sound centered noise, which actually hinders, the perception of a message. It can be anything. For example, if you're sending an email to someone and he doesn't have internet connectivity, that's a noise in a sense, because that is what is stopping the receiver from getting the message. In the same way, using a particular language which the receiver does not understand is a type of noise. So noise in the communication sense is not the sound-centered noise only, all those hindrances would be considered noisier. Okay, right. So this is a very important thing to understand when communication has to take place. Now, the next important thing to understand when it comes to communication is why communication, after all, takes place, why we communicate, what is the goal of communication. So there are basically 3 goals which are discussed, but there are many more. I have taken 3 from there. The first thing is communication, first of all, informs. So you have something in your mind, you have an idea, you want someone to do something, you inform them of it. So informing is one of the goals of communication. And the second important thing about communication is communication aims at persuading, convincing, that you have you want someone to agree with you, so you can do that by communicating with that person. So persuading is the second goal of communication. And the third goal I have chosen here is to build relationships. Now, building relationships is a more personal and social phenomenon. But I leave it to you if you take it as a personal and social phenomenon, or if it happens in a professional context also. But communication is the base of building relationships, connecting with people, sharing ideas with them. So all this will happen as a result of communication. I don't want to show it, a one-way communication. I want to hear from you. So I just leave it to you now, please. Can you just use your microphones to discuss which of these goals do you think are more of personal and social in nature, and which of them are the goals we can think about communication at work? Can you use your microphone and discuss that, please? So
Hello.
anyone, yes, please.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Ahmed. How are you? Very
That's Blue?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we know each other from MT and all that. So I'm just going to get right to it. I think the thing that I struggle with the most is persuading, to be honest. I feel like it has a lot to do with, I think I am a good communicator, and I can I can send messages in a very professional way. However, I feel like to be able to persuade someone is another level that I need to maybe develop, especially in the workplace. So I think, yeah, this is the most one that caught me. It's the most one that caught my eye, to be honest. And I feel like, yeah, it has a lot to do with, you have to have, superpowers to be able to do that.
So persuading.
Yeah.
Do you think as
Persuading.
as a social and personal aim of communication, or it is more professional in nature?
It has to do with both, actually.
Oh.
But I feel like informing someone about something or building relationship is, it's more personal, on a personal level. And I think that even if the other person is not a very good communicator, you can still build relationships with them or inform them of anything. But to be able to persuade them, the other person needs to have good communication skills as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, got it. Yes,
it's a two-way street.
That's perfectly correct. Yes. So others, if you could just join the discussion, please. Any other comments on that?
Please, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Who is speaking there?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum, Mahmoud.
Yes, Mahmoud. Mahmoud, yes.
Yes, how are you?
Great. Yes,
Good evening, everybody. I think we can't classify them into personal and professional. I think we use both here and here.
Perfect.
Maybe
Yes.
maybe there is a percentage of using some of them more in professional and the others in personal relationship, but they are related to both, I think.
Yes, yes, I can't agree more. Actually, that's the perfect idea. I mean, so I mean, that is to say that communication at work is not something altogether different. So what we are leading to, where we are heading to, is that communication is communication, be it at a personal level, in a social phenomenon, or at an organization level. Yet another way, sense, we may say that organizations or the workplaces have a social aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So in that sense, we all do all of these things, both at the social and personal level, and the same thing happens in a professional context. But the level might be different, the means might be different, and the medium and the method might be different. Right. And we'll come to that next. So if anyone else wants to say something, then I'll just move on. Okay, so I assume no one is there to contribute. Fine, that's okay. So let's go to the next thing. So once we actually say that the communication has these aims, so how communication actually achieves these aims? And I have just put in here a few, ways, we use to communicate. But there is a very important aspect of communication not included here. I want you to just read the bubbles there on the screen and tell me what is not included here. What is the most important thing which is not here? Yeah, did anyone say something? But we didn't hear actually.
Yes, Mr. Ahmed.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a speech.
Exactly, isn't it? Speaking is not so we communicate by speaking, oral communication, isn't it? So that's the most important thing, and that is the most frequently employed method of communication. Then we communicate by writing, we communicate by facial expressions, by drawing, by using equipment, pointing, and by using gestures, eye contact. So these are all different ways of communicating to other people. Okay, now, as I said, this session is mainly about communication, communicating at work. So I'm just taking you to that aspect of it. How is communication at work? How it works? How communication works in a work context. So as you can see on the screen, I have actually divided the work context into two different aspects of it. One very important aspect of the work context is that it has a management aspect. And the other one I have just given to the right side of it, that is the leadership aspect of it. So communication as a management tool and communication as a leadership tool, I have just tried to differentiate the two there. So at the management level, what managers normally do is they plan things, they organize, they direct, they coordinate, and they control, everything in the organization. And in doing all of those things, they communicate with people. They engage in communication to carry out all the management tasks. Whereas the nature of leadership is very different. Leaders, on the other hand, influence. The goal of leadership is to influence, to bring about change, to bring change, to manage change, or let's say to bring about change. That's a better wording to it. And also, their focus is the growth of the organization. Whereas all these things are carried out by managers in a very different way. So they plan, they are very systematic, they organize, direct, coordinate, and control. And in doing all these tasks, both the managers and the leaders communicate to people to the people they lead, to the people they manage. Okay. Now, here, one thing that I have tried to suggest is that leadership is different from management. Yet, in other words, leadership, a leader is different from a manager. Now, let's look at this thing here now. How is leadership different from management? Because it's very important. Then that will actually define how communication is actually utilized by both of these different aspects of organizational management. So to the left, we have the leadership, and then we have management. So what leaders normally do is leaders have they focus on goals. On the other hand, managers or the management actually focuses on tasks. So focus on goals versus focus on tasks. So an overall focus of leadership is on goals. So you actually want to achieve a set of goals that you define, whereas manager actually has got the goals, maybe given to him by the leadership in whatever way, but his job is to focus on individual tasks to achieve those things. So that the focus at the management level is the task. At the leadership level, the goals, after they are defined, a leader's role is to sell the goals to those who follow it. And on the other hand, the managers actually tell the goals. I mean, the difference there is this. One makes the goal your goals, and the other one says, these are my goals, please do them. The leaders actually make the goals he defines as your own goal. For example, if there's a leader under whom you're working, so what the leaders do is, right, so these are the goals, and these are not my goals. I'm making them your goals. So let's do it. This is one thing. So you're selling the goals to the followers. So, and then the followers actually consider them as their own goals and try to achieve them. This is what the leaders do. On the other hand, managers actually tell those who they manage that these are the goals, do it. So in a sense, these are my goals, do them. And they are held accountable for not being able to achieve those goals. So that's the difference between leadership and management. And the next very important thing about leadership is leaders take risks, whereas managers minimize risks. That's why in most of the organizations, there is the risk management unit is always there. How can we minimize risks? Whereas in the leadership context, minimizing risk is not their objective. They want to take risk. They want to disrupt. They want to make change based on whatever at whatever cost. Unless and until you will start taking risk, you will not be able to doing things in a new way, in a different way. Because in a pursuit of minimizing risk, what you're doing is, okay, let's do the things the way they have been defined. So you're not going beyond that point, right? And the next thing about leadership is leaders encourage the followers to achieve the goals, whereas managers instruct. I don't want to go too deep into these, but that's what they do. And the next thing is leaders actually go against the grain, and that's a very important thing. It's a very big difference between leaders and managers. So leaders go against the grain, and managers go with the flow. So how they go against the grain? I mean, unless and until you disrupt, and I use that thing when I explain taking risk as well. So you've got to take risks, and unless and until you're ready to make big changes to it, you question the assumption, you question the rules itself, nothing big is going to happen. So that is going against the grain. And whereas managers actually, they say, right, the rules have been defined and we are going to follow them. That's it. So there is no innovative ideas are expected at the management level. So all this happens at the leadership thing. Similarly, leadership motivate and managers approve. So you have done it right and that's wrong, and this is also once you make it my goal, I'll try to achieve it because I want to achieve my goals. But at the management level, you get the manager's approval if you did it well or not, if that is if that needs to be done again or not. So all that thing is the management level. Now going back to leadership, leaders break the rules. And as I said previously, disruption. There was this professor of leadership at the Harvard University. I forgot his name, but he died probably 2 years ago. I can find his name later. He was actually the key figure dealing with disruptive leadership. So what he actually propagated was this, that unless and until you disrupt the existing structure, you can't bring about big changes in the management or in the organizations. Small changes, tweaks will not give you a big change in the organization. If you aim at big changes at the organizational level, the first thing would be to make a disruption, to make big changes to it, to question the assumptions, to question rules and all that. So that is the rule breaking comes under that thing. Whereas the management level, you follow the rules. And at the leadership level, they inspire, and management level, they expect control, right? So I am making it happen. I'm the one who is making people do it. So that is at the management level. Leadership foster ideas and management assign tasks. But having said everything, it is not that management is better than leadership or leadership is better than management, or let's say they exist in isolation. In most cases, many managers are good leaders as well. So management and leadership work together to accomplish big goals for the organization. They mobilize the existing resources for the organization, and they explain the vision of the organization. So it is not that we should consider them existing separate from each other. So they are something which coexist. There is something, of a management in nature and leaders, whereas some managers have leadership skills also. So that's a very important thing to understand at this level. But the next thing we're going to do is how leaders and managers actually use communication to do all these things that we just defined, how they focus on goals, how they use, different forms and means and methods of communication to carry out the role of leadership and management. Okay, if anyone has any questions or any comments so far, I'll just give it a second or so.
Excuse me, sir. Can we say that leaders concentrate on direct or indirect communication, and managers use direct communication to achieve their goals?
I agree with you. Yes, that's right. That's 100% true, because that's what we said. Inspire. It does not need to be instructed, right? That's why the word instruct, we have it under the management heading, and inspiring, because once you are a leader and I'm following you, I'll see you are doing things in a certain way. And if you're a good leader, I'll try to do it the way you are doing it. Or maybe if you have motivated me to an extent that I'll try to go beyond what we can do. 100% true. Yes, I agree with you. Any other comments? And I just want to add one thing to it. It's not mentioned here in the slide, is that the leadership roles are not role specific. The leadership qualities that we have mentioned here are not role specific, whereas the management roles that we have given there all need a designation. This is a role. A manager has to be someone sitting up there, whereas a leader all the managers can be leaders. They cannot be leaders. But a manager is a manager. That's why most of the organizations have a manager, but they don't have a leader. Right? So that's a very important thing to note here. Let's move on. Okay, now, a natural thing is why communication has to be effective. Although it's an understood thing, but let's talk about some of the benefits of effective communication. Communication has to be effective for a variety of reasons. There are so many other reasons, but I will just be focusing on 3 here. The first reason I have mentioned on the screen there is the ability to effectively communicate with others is one of the most important tools for professional and personal success. So be it a personal level success or professional success, if you're able to communicate effectively, that actually defines to what extent you will be successful in what you're involved in. So success is the result of effective communication. Now, this is to say that having a grand idea in your head is not the thing that can make you successful. Communicating it, taking it to its logical destinations, that will make you successful, both at personal and professional level. The next benefit, the next reason to be an effective communicator is effective communication can help you influence others. This is more to do with leadership. That if you are an effective communicator, you influence others. Remember, one of the key words about leadership is leaders influence. And this influence, as one of the colleagues just mentioned there, that this can be a non-verbal communication, right? That is a communication which do not need words. But at the same time, that can be a very effective communication at times, right? And the next important thing is your capacity to communicate is often seen as an indicator of your ability and intelligence. This is more so in the current age, where your smartness, your ability, your capability, what you're able to do is what you say you're able to do, right? So people take you for what you say. Most of the time, they cannot read your mind. What you're able to do is what you say you're able to do. If you have a grand idea in your head, are you able to communicate it very effectively to the people? Can you put together all the tools and the resources to make it known? Because communication is a very systematic thing. So all those linguistic and non-linguistic resources that help you in communicating, if you're able to use them and convey your message together, that proves that you are something. You are a professional person. So that's a very important thing about it. Okay. Now how all this happens? How does communication at work take place?
Mr.
At the
Ahmed,
workplace. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
can I add something?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Can we say that communication has to be effective in order to facilitate the job or the work? Or sometimes we can add something else, which is it helps in team building and building capacities. Can we say that?
Yes, perfectly so. Yes, that's 100% true. But you will see something very related to this in the following slides as well. That is at the management level. Yes, communication actually affects the performance of the subordinates, the employees. That is actually a very important aspect to consider. I agree with you there. Yes.
I think even on the level of the employees, for example, here in our area, for the team members in the NGOs, the communication skills helps a lot while contacting with people,
Oh,
especially
yes.
especially in the humanitarian areas.
Yes.
It helps a lot.
Oh, yeah,
So
exactly.
so in the interviews, they are concentrating a lot on the communication skills because it facilitates the job, and it prevents problems while doing the task.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Communication is a very key thing. It is very important, and it has we have hundreds of reasons to be better communicators. And communicators, as at the professional level, as you rightly said, that it indicates your ability and intelligence, in the sense that if you're going for a job interview, for example, definitely your ability to communicate well goes in favor of you. And because communication matters, it matters. It makes things happen. Communication at the right time. It has so many examples we can quote. Many an occasion, communication at the right time has actually saved lives, and that's a very important thing there. I purposely didn't involve the linguistic aspect of it, because if I had tried to do that, it could have, gone far beyond the scope, the time that is given to us. So yeah, I completely agree with you that communication is what makes a difference. When it comes to choose the right person for a job, because it's a very important thing. I hope I just made some points on that, and that's what you meant when you asked the question. So can we just move on? Yeah, let's see. So as I said, communication at work takes place using different methods and media. So on the screen, you can see that there are a variety of methods used by the management in organizations to communicate with their employees. And some of them I have just put there on the screen. As you can see there, there's a verbal communication. And that is the spoken communication that we involved in. Written communication, electronic, visual, audio, group meetings, notice board, text, and there could be many more. These are different methods of communication. That's how we communicate. These are the different methods of communication. But the next slide, as you can see there, this is also an extension to that. These are the mediums that the managers use to communicate. The mediums of communication are different from the methods of communication, right? Now, look at the mediums of communication. Now, the managers communicate by writing letters, memos, report, putting something on the notice boards, faxes, telephone, email, face-to-face communication, body language, video or video conferencing, using the internet. So these are the different mediums of communication the managers employ. Can you add anything to it? Is there any other way to communicate at work? A method or a medium?
Yes, Mr. Ahmed.
Yes, sir. Yes, Rahman.
Can we add the senses as a medium or a method of communication?
Sorry, say it again.
The senses, for example, the taste, the smell, sometimes the smell of the perfume, or the color.
Oh, so that's kind of a non-verbal. These are perceptive communication. Basically, this is perceptive. This is actually the perception of a message. It is not an active way of communicating. Basically, communication is not the perception of it. It is the we impart something, right? So colors, or let's say, yes, definitely I understand what you mean when you say colors, or the color, the smell and all that. They definitely communicate a message. I agree with you. Yes, so the non-verbal, or let's say sign language, or that sort of, exactly, I agree with you. So these are the methods of communication. So we can add to this list. I agree with you. Yeah. Any other? If anyone has an idea. Yeah. So,
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
alaikum salam. Yes.
This
That's
is
Arshad.
Arshad. Yes.
Yes. Arshad.
I think websites can be used to communicate with a very wide range of audience. And nowadays, because of pandemic, we've been using WhatsApp messages, so WhatsApp groups, or maybe any application that people are using. So groups have been a very good means of communication with employees and with managers. Also, social media platforms, they can also reach out to a very wide range of audience,
That's right.
not only the people who are working in a specific organization or institute, but even beyond. So that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Because one thing is, if you just look at the screen there, I have actually mentioned notice boards. I mean, these are sort of the things of the past. In most places, they have been replaced with what they can put in the on an organization's website. The announcements are made there. So notice boards are no more used in most cases, but they are there in some cases. Yes, they are there, but notice boards are probably replaced by the websites now. The notice boards have gone electronically, using the internet. Things are announced there.
Yes. Can I add something more?
Yes,
And
please, go
even
ahead.
now, YouTube is being used quite a lot, because if you can see, your own sessions are recorded and then they're put on YouTube for people to see. It's not exactly like communication, but to spread the message to a wider audience. Also, Twitter is being used quite a lot.
Social media. Yeah.
Yep,
So exactly, 100% true. Yes, that's right. I just put them all under the medium of internet. So these are different mediums they use to communicate. Yeah, let's move on to the next thing. Yeah, so all those means of communication that we talked about, they are not always the same. So I mean, if I just take you back to the two lists that we talked about, the medium and the method of communication, which one do you think in the methods of communication you see on the screen, and now it's the mediums of communication you see on the screen, what would you place to be the best way to communicate? What is the best method or mean of communication in your opinion? And what's the worst? Yes, I just want you to make some comments on that. Yeah, even if in the chat room, I'm just following the messages there. Okay, face-to-face is the best. Shada says it. Yeah, anybody else?
Hello, hi again.
Yes.
Hi, Ahmed.
Hello,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think being able to use all of your senses to communicate is the best way to communicate with someone. However, you need to be good at it. So let's say if you're using a text or messaging to communicate, some people actually are more effective communicators when it comes to writing. You know what I mean? Because they are not very good at face-to-face communication. And so I think it depends on the person, really. And which
that's also true. Yeah.
How they are they able to organize and be verbal and have gestures, eye contact, and so on. Some people don't know when to pause. Some people don't know how to organize their ideas in a clear way.
Yes.
So I think it's a really interesting question. So
that's right. Yeah. So I mean, out of the list that we have mentioned here, yeah, if anyone wants to make any comments on that, what do you think is the best method or medium of communication? Yes.
I would say that because we know the multiple intelligence theories, so maybe each of these would appeal to different people. For example, like some people are good at understanding visual cues, others are good at written text, understanding written text. So maybe if we could use almost all of these, or maybe the maximum number of different methods to communicate with the employees or your team members, probably that would be
Now, if you have to choose
effective.
one, let's say you
I
cannot.
I would
pick one of
choose
the
written because in an organization, I mean, where I work, people all the time say, I don't trust the verbal or the face-to-face word of mouth. I need everything in black and white. So
two.
probably, I mean, to keep a record of what the communication.
Okay, so writing, and what would be the worst?
Uh, I mean, just verbal talking or audio, sending a message. If by audio you mean like sending a message or talking on the, I mean, for audio would have the advantage of communicating through with your own voice, and it will be like in speed. You would communicate the or face to face. You would also be able to make the person understand with your gestures, even, or you will have these other extra linguistic um, things with you. But when it comes down to at the end of the day, I think the written text or email is something which people would, I mean, I don't know. People
Yeah,
can agree.
okay. Okay, yeah, fine. So Ahmed says visual, probably in his opinion, that's the best way of communication.
حق اللي ارجع المريال طيب قالت خيلي وضعهم تحسيهم
Oh,
ماشي.
okay. Yeah,
على
sorry.
طيب فقامت
Yeah, excuse me. If you can, yeah, turn off your microphones if you're not using them, please. Yeah. So, okay, so, and I've got a second thing here. Ibrahim says it's a mix of all. Yeah, okay, fine. But, you know, we need to differentiate between two very important things. When we impart something, we are trying to communicate. Understanding of a message is definitely, it's part of communication. But basically, when I'm using a method of communication, I'm using them to say something to someone out there, right? For example, verbal communication is, you know, when we impart some sort of message to each other, then there is someone who becomes a sender and there is someone a receiver. So if I'm just, you know, sending audio messages to someone, so I prefer, let's say, the audio messages. They're easy for me to impart. And someone says, no, I'm not auditory. I just want to see something visual, as probably Ahmed said it just now. A visual communication, in some people's opinion, is better than audio ones. And some people prefer verbal, and others say, no, it should be written, as Arshad rightly mentioned there. Now, let's see what actually is normally what the research says about it. How actually are they actually placed or categorized as the best and the worst. So you can see this on your screen. The information, the quality of communication, the richness of communication that can happen as a result of the different mediums and methods of communication. We will start from the low level of richness to high richness. And then we will see what is the practice. So according to the research, the memos and the letters have very low communication richness. So there will always be something wanting. There will always be something not clear when it comes to the letters and the memos. And they are at the bottom layer of this grid. And something better to that is an email or a video. And a video, yeah, it makes sense because there is the sound, and at the same time you can see people talking. So maybe that's the reason memos are and letters have been put in the bottom layer, and videos are better than them. And then there's an email. And the only reason I can think of placing emails better than memos and letters is because you can immediately communicate when it comes to receiving a message by email. You can write back to it, back to the person who sent you the message. So that's why it is better than that. Now, even better than that is online discussion groups. The online discussion groups, and probably we have been using them at the university, especially during the pandemic. I mean, this was the order of the day. So online discussion is yet another method of communication, which is better than memos and letters and videos. And I don't want to go to individually all those different methods and mediums. And the best one is considered to be the face-to-face conversation. And at the same level, video conference also has more or less the same information richness. Now, look at the practice. But actually what happens in practice is that the thing that has the least information richness is most frequently used in organizations. So organizations use the memos and letters to be a mostly employed medium of communication, whereas research says that is the least preferable way to communicate. Whereas what is the best way to communicate, that is the face-to-face conversation, and that's the least used in organizational communications. Right, so this is the practice versus the quality of the information richness. Okay. Right. I just want to, so the main point here is that organizations actually use a method and medium of communication with their employees. And there is always, there is always a mechanism to manage information in organizations. But sometimes what happens is the lack of having approach to conveying messages, to communicate ideas or instructions to the employees actually results in a phenomenon called the grapevine. Now, what happens in grapevines is, if there is no proper way to communicate to the employees, it results in some sort of rumor and gossip in every nook and corner of the organization, which is not the official version of the different decisions and events that are taking place in the organization. So it actually results in gossip chain. So I just become a source for someone. I tell one thing to a group of people who become further sources for other clusters, and it just moves on. Now, in that, when the grapevine happens, a grapevine is actually, I've just defined it as, it's a gossip from the break room to the water cooler. So that's what happens. Everywhere in the corridor, people just engage in some sort of gossip. And it is not that it is always wrong. Maybe the information that is discussed in that could be something that can be relied on, but that's not the official version. That is not actually conveyed to you using the official methods. So grapevine actually carries unofficial messages. It flows haphazardly. There's no systematic spread of information. Rather, it reaches the wrong people. A right message reaching the wrong people, and the wrong message reaching everyone. So that's all what happens. So it can be sometimes remarkably accurate. So whatever people talk about, gossip, and that may be accurate at times, but it is something that the management in an organization usually dislike. So it's not the preferred way to communicate. And grapevine thrives where official information is limited. That's a very important thing for any organization to define a very effective medium and method of communication, so that all those rumors and gossip could be overcome. Right. So this much about communication at the management level. Now, I'll just take you to the next aspect of it, as I told in the beginning, that we would also be talking about communication as a leadership role. So leadership, we discussed, is very different from management. So let's see how communication happens at the leadership level. Now, before we move on, I just want to define what leadership is. So the definition goes, as you can see on your screens, is that leadership is a process by which a person influences others to accomplish an objective and directs the organization in a way that makes it more comprehensive and coherent. Very important things highlighted there. So it's a process by which a person influences others. So leadership is basically something that focuses on influencing others. That influence can be a direct influence by saying what is the best way to do it, what is the best thing to engage in, or maybe indirect, as one of the colleagues rightly mentioned a few minutes ago, that sometimes a leader's communication is nonverbal and indirect. So that actually happens at the leadership level. And so the purpose of communication at the leadership level is to accomplish an objective. So the accomplishing objective may sometimes not be a management objective. It may not be directly an organizational objective. It could be an objective that is important to the wider field. Let's say if you're an academic, if you're engaged in some sort of research, and that research actually benefits a wider group of people than benefiting the organization where you are. Okay, with that definition, I just want to ask you a question. So in your capacity as an academic, a teacher, a lecturer, professor, whatever position you have, do you consider yourself a leader? And if yes, who you lead? Yes, please use your microphones and respond to that.
Okay, can I say something?
Yes, please, go ahead, Arshad.
Okay, I have to answer this question, but before that, I will say something about when you talked about communication and the grapevine and how it thrives. So I think when the communication, when there's a breakdown in communication in an organization, then the grapevine thrives. And why there is a communication breakdown? Because what I know is that there is like an upward communication and a downward communication. So
That's
if
right.
so the downward communication is, of course, when the leaders or the managers communicating down with their employees, with their workers, with their team members, and vice versa. But in certain organizations, there is no upward communication. The team members cannot communicate with the managers. They are sometimes not allowed, or it's discouraged, and then the workers or the team members are unable to communicate whatever their feelings or desires or their requirements are. Or either the way of communication is so much involved with red tapeism, like you have to write an email to your this person above you, and then this person will send an email to another person, and so the message is lost, and then you never know what happened to whatever you wanted to ask. So probably that could be one of the things. Now I'm going to come to the question. As a teacher, I think I consider myself as a leader because I'm the leader of my class, if you can say that. My students look up to me. They put me in a role models position. They would follow my instructions, not only my the teaching instructions that I give them, like to read or write or whatever, but also how I act, how I come to my class, punctuality, like my entire personality, which is in front of them. They might get inspired from them. So if I, like I lead them as a leader, and I act as a leader, and I have these really good qualities of leadership that I show to them, I probably might inspire them. Also, maybe as a teacher, teachers make leaders actually. So he's the maker of leaders, I would say. Well, that's it.
Yeah. That's very interesting points. Very interesting points. Yes, 100%. You are very right in pointing out that people, because leadership is all about influencing. Influence is the key word when it comes to the definition of a leader. So the immediate, influence that you're imparting, or the people who you influence, are your students. So in that definition, definitely, you are a leader. Yeah. Any other comments of that? Yes, any other colleagues, if you want to say anything about this question? Yeah, if you want to say anything in the chat room, I can.
And if I want to add in one more thing,
yes, please.
Is probably communication is again one of the tools as a teacher that I can use to influence my students. And then, for example, you said for a leader, he or she must have really good communication skills, or he should have the ability to inspire his audiences with his communication skills. So probably as a teacher, if I personally or professionally work towards gaining a high standard of communication, then probably my students might also get inspired by that. And well, that's it.
Yeah, it's 100% true. Very valid comment, Sarshad. That's really, that actually makes sense there. The other thing that I would just say, because we're not getting many responses there. Academics, teachers, lecturers, professors, they influence a variety of groups of people. You influence your students, and you become a role model. You actually you influence the way they act, they behave, their future. You become a role model. All that is true, but at the same time, by being a professional academic, by involving in research, by contributing to the professional activities around you, you influence people. For example, if you conduct a research about a certain way of, let's say, if you're a teacher, of teaching, let's say this is not the best way to do something, and you conduct, let's say, a study on that, and you come out with a better way to do it, you're influencing people. So, influencing your students is a downward influence, isn't it? So this influence is not a unidirectional thing when it comes to leadership. The leaders actually influence in a multi-directional way. This is a very important thing to understand here. Someone has sent a message. I'll just quickly have a look at that before making it. That's 100% true. Yes. Okay. So, when it comes to professionalism, when it comes to leadership, communication is more of a multi-directional thing, because the main job of a leader, as we just mentioned, is to influence the others. When your influence is multi-directional, definitely your communication is also multi-directional. When you're influencing the people to your left, to your right, to the people above you and the people below you, you are a multi-directional influencer. So who you influence horizontally, the people who you work with, and who you influence upward. For example, you carry out a study about a way of, let's say, about an academic practice at your institution. So you are actually giving a suggestion to the management that that's not the way to do it. This is a better way to do it. So in doing that, you're influencing those people. And in conveying that message to the management, you are involved in some type of communication. And at the same time, the downward communication is the communication that you actually involved with your students and any junior staff. And I have actually, put it this here in the next slide. So what actually happens is this. So the different, level of communication and influence that a leader involves in is this. So you influence your co-workers, you influence the manager, the managers in the organization, and at the same time, you influence the junior staff or your students as a leader. So leaders, as I said, leadership is not a role. It is not a role. It is rather a process in which everyone can involve. You, being a teacher, can be a leader. You are a leader if you are able to influence the people around you, the people below you, the people working above you, the managers, the co-workers, the junior staff, the students, in all the 360 degrees. You are a leader. And a leader does not need to have a position. Leadership is not a position-based role. It is something that you involve in. You lead. If you are involved in the action of leading, and in doing that, you're influencing people, you're a leader. I just recall that book by Robin Sharma. I might be having that book here with me. How to lead without a role. So leadership does not require a role. So you don't need to be the head of the institution to lead. Anyone can lead by involving himself into the business of leading, because that's a huge thing. Okay. This is probably, we are coming to the end of this session. So in any of that thing, be communication, at the leadership level or management level, communication is actually, communication meets some barriers, which actually impact effective communication. So some of those things which I have listed there, some 13 or 14 of them, these are some of the barriers which actually affect effective communication. And the first and the topmost of of those barriers is poor language skill. Poor language skill from both angles, be it the communicator himself, someone who is imparting the message, or someone who is receiving the message. If the language is not of some quality, of some good level, they will not be able to communicate well. I can see a message there in the chat room. Okay, right, just an endorsement. Right, and the second thing is interruptions and noise. This is, some of them, if you could just put all of these things into, let's say some of them are physical barriers, some of them are psychological barriers, some of them are barriers related to cultural issues. So, I mean, linguistic skill is a linguistic barrier. And then interruption and noise, this is a physical thing, that there is something between you and the listener. Oh, yeah. So how can we assess if we are good leaders? Yeah, very difficult to assess yourself if you are involved in the business of leading, right? So I wish I could just, include it more about the leadership thing. leaders basically influence, and there are so many things about it that leaders do. Leadership is not a claim. It is not something that I'm a leader. Rather, if you lead, if you make an impact, if you make a difference in the lives of people, in their professional life, you're a leader. So it's probably there is, I won't be able to give you a check mark that if these 5 or 6 things are met, you will be a very good leader. It's a very subjective.
Hello. Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not an easy question. You can't really answer it in one line. However, I feel like I do think that I am a good leader to a certain extent, but what bothers me is that sometimes you get, when you deal with difficult students or you deal with unmotivated students, you kind of question at that moment, am I a good leader? Am I a good teacher? I mean, you have these kind of situations where you try everything, but you don't get the result that you want. Although like 99% of the time you do, but it's that 1%.
Let me interrupt there. Let me interrupt there. If you ever engage with yourself in this communication, that am I a good leader? Am I doing enough? Can I do it in a better way? You are a good leader. Because the people, the other way around would be, I would just consider myself to be a good leader without questioning myself. If you question your own way of doing things, that is one of the very important characteristics of a good leader.
Okay, that's good to know. Always room for improvement.
Yeah, you can be happy with that. Definitely, yes. So yeah, that's a very important point, that leaders actually, nothing is out of the boundary of leadership. It's a very important thing that if stagnation, if you're insisting on one way of doing things, then definitely that's a question. That's a very big question mark on what's leadership, because it's a very open-ended thing. You don't question perceptions. Why something is done in a certain way, and if you do not have, let's say, one thing, a way of doing things can be right at a certain point, but with the passage of time, there are better ways that can be thought of. So if we are not involved in discovering and inventing new ways of doing things, we are not leaders, right? So we are, we can be managers. Look, managers, it's a different thing. Managers do what they are asked to do, right? So they go by books. Leaders don't have any books to follow. They are very innovative. Innovation is a very key word about leadership. Yeah. So wait a second. So let's finally talk about these barriers. So a variety of things which actually impact effective communication, and the list, as you can see there. And then what could be, what can we do about it? What can we do to be effective communicators? So, for example, if one feels that it's the poor language that has an impact in, on my way to be an effective communicator, the best thing is to improve on that. And interruptions and noise, these are more physical things in nature. So when, let's say, if I'm conducting this session right now and there's music playing just behind me, or let's say the kids are shouting around, that's not a good way to communicate, or the medium I'm using is not very effective. And some people have a habit of overloading the language by using unnecessary idioms when it comes to speak, especially when it comes to speaking English. And those idioms are very, they're one of the barriers for the receivers to understand what you actually mean to say. Emotional interference, absence of feedback, very important thing. If it is just one-way communication, if I'm talking and I assume that someone is listening to me, I mean, that communication will not take place. The feedback phase, as I just explained to you in the beginning of the session, is very important there. Poor listening skills or inattentiveness. This is you know, an overall phenomenon we're all experiencing right now due to the you know, the smart gadgets and all that. Attention span is actually is coming down. We cannot give attention more than only a few seconds. So that's actually a communication barrier. And not speaking with clarity, variation in accents in different countries, that's a point. Wrong perceptions and wrong inferences. Yeah, this is what, you know, sometimes we think that the speaker actually knows those things I'm just mentioning. So the fact is there's a gap. So if we know that punctuation, miscommunication, muddled messages, confused messages, then I'm not clear in my mind what I want to say. So all those things actually impact communication, and the best thing is to avoid that. Okay. The last thing is
Can I,
yes,
excuse me,
please,
can I
Arshad.
add something
Yes,
to the
yeah,
last? Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes, go ahead, Arshad. Yeah.
Can you go? Okay, so this is just a comment, maybe. What I see other barriers is that there are certain hidden things. For example, like stereotyping. For example,
100%.
like there is a message or an email coming from such and such person, and then the other person says like, okay, he's from this nationality or that nationality, and well, or maybe from this society, strata of society, or that strata of society. So probably he might not even look at the message or put an effort to understand what the message is. So there are certain other hidden, you know, I think reasons could be for miscommunication or communication barriers. Also, for example, like if we talk about leadership, so some leaders are leaders that they include everyone in the decision making, and probably they would have open ears to everyone and listen to everyone attentively. Others leaders might be authoritative, and they feel or believe that whatever they say is the best and the right thing, and they might put a barrier in front of them by not listening to anyone or accepting ideas from people. So these could be other barriers. Probably they would come under any of these 14 barriers that you have talked about, but I just, you know, kind of gave some
Yeah,
examples.
I completely agree with you, Arshad. These are definitely, you know, stereotypes and all of them. They are definitely, you know, I mean, this is not an exhausting list. I mean, there are many other things can be added to this. But as I said, you know, basically, sorry to cut you there. Basically, we have a few of these things. Even if we just put all these 14 things here into the categories, some of these are linguistic in nature, and the others, as you say, there are stereotypes. You may say it in that way. Some of them are emotional, some of them are you know, cultural, and some of them are you know, some other forms of barriers that impact communication. They are there, but mostly because the interest shown in today's session in leadership, I wish I had a session on leadership, because there is so much that can be said about leadership. It's a very big thing. There are different types of leaders, different types of leadership, which can be talked about. Leadership styles are different. And all those different leadership styles, they have their own pros and cons. Authoritative leadership, for example, and authoritarian leadership, it has its benefits in some you know, context, and definitely it has its flaws. And let's say we have different types of it. So the purpose is here just to say that there are leaders, and that's why I didn't go into the types of leadership. There are leaders, and leaders communicate, and the communication actually is the basic thing. That's why I didn't go into that. Yeah, probably someone wants to say something.
I would like to add one more thing. Sorry, I'm
Yes.
taking your time. There could be other like internal political situations in certain organizations For example, some managers or maybe some people might not like to communicate the leadership's management down to the workers, because I don't know, there could be other factors like their importance might be minimized, or so there can be other social factors as well, as far as like communication barriers are concerned, that they don't want to convey the exact or the clear message down to the workers or the team members. This
Yeah,
could
I
be,
mean, yeah,
I mean,
that's
I could be wrong.
I mean, no, it's not wrong, but the thing is, you know, basically, as I said previously, communication is a leadership tool. So all it goes back to is the leadership style. I mean, there are different types of leaders. I mean, they have different ways to carry out the leadership role. So it all depends on how they perceive it to be right. So yeah, so that's what I can say. There's this question by one of these colleagues: does it mean that we shouldn't wait for the public to estimate us? Whether we are good leaders or not, we shouldn't give attention to people's public reaction rather than stand up. I completely agree with you. I mean, you can't make everyone happy. That's definitely not possible. I mean, someone said, I just remember that if you want everyone to say you're a good leader, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing, right? So yeah, that's the thing. I mean, yes, being too sensitive to what people say is a very different scenario. If you are sure, not a criteria set by yourself, rather with an honest understanding of the concept of leadership. If you believe that you are imparting some type of leadership, regardless of the position that you're holding, that's a very effective thing. That is what is required. That's what I can say. And the last thing, the last slide of today's session is the conclusion we are trying to reach. So whatever we said so far, in short, is communication is sharing of information between individuals and groups. And the goal of communication is reaching and understanding. So that's a very important thing, as against reaching agreement. So agreement is not the goal of communication, understanding is. Leaders and managers are various, so leaders and managers use various methods and mediums to communicate. So that's the next very important thing we discussed. And leaders influence the followers in a multi-directional communication. So the influence that leaders actually engage in is multi-directional, and we discussed that. Communication is hindered by a variety of factors, by various factors, which can be overcome by understanding them by the sender and the receiver of the information. So that is all about today's session. So, oh, Ibrahim, yes. I mean, this is, again, you know, you are tempting me to go into things like, are leaders born or they're made? It's a very big thing. So I would just suggest you to Google this thing, and you will see hundreds of other things that are leaders born or they're made. Is leadership something that we can learn, or we're born to lead? So all those things are very important. But remember, leadership, although it was a dominated concept in today's session, but we actually we wanted to focus on the communication that leaders involved in. Right, so yeah, thank you, Arshad. So that's it. If you have any further questions or comments to make about the things we discussed, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
MashaAllah, Brother Ahmed, a very smart leader, and you motivated everybody today to be a smart leader like you. And a lot of participants, MashaAllah, proved to be very smart leaders. Really, I would like to thank you, Brother Ahmed, for your exceptional presentation this night. very valuable, very
Thank you.
insightful, wonderful presentation. We learned a lot, actually. Special thanks even will go to those who really enriched the presentation with their contributions. I would like to name Sister Khulud, Brother Arshad, Sister Shada, and Abdul Rahman, Mahmoud Soufi, Ahmed Saraj Ali, Ghada Abu Naja, Brother Ibrahim Madani, Brother Yahya Al-Ghandi. MashaAllah, you all did a great job. And that made the presentation very interactive. And this is the ultimate goal we are here for, inshallah. Any questions before I post the evaluation form and the YouTube channel links? Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, it seems.
I have to make a last comment.
Yes.
Ahmed, you have to give us a session on leadership separately now, because you've talked about leadership so much, and I'm really now inspired to listen to what you have to tell us about leadership.
But we can't do it in the writing center, right? We should look for a different forum for it.
Right.
Kamal.
Yeah, but it was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank
there's
you.
so
Thank you
much.
for being there.
Yeah, you tried to cover so many things, but of course, it's never exhaustive, and it was a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Arshad. Thank you for your encouraging comment. So it looks people don't want to ask questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to this session. Brother Kamal, thank you very much for the last comment. Actually, you proved yourself a very effective leader by that last comment. And yeah, so I would just say that. Thank you.